Welcome to the Creative Flight, my private jet that today will take us on a bit of a journey. It's special because you can take us to the past, you can stay in the present, or we can fly to the future. So my guest today is someone you probably recognize from YouTube, with one of his videos having over 4 million views. His educational content focuses on financial independence and investing. And it's not every day you get to speak to someone that has achieved financial independence by the age of 30. Welcome to the show, Jason Graystone.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks very much for such a nice introduction. 4 million views on a video is crazy.
It is crazy. I have so many questions for you, but for the listeners who may not know who you are, can you give them a bit of a snapshot of how you ended up doing what you do and where you are right now?
Sure, snapshot. I'll try and make it as short as possible, but I grew up with a very poor upbringing on a council estate in London, and various things like my dad leaving before I was born and us not having money and the bailiffs knocking on the door for electricity money and not having electricity, all those kind of things shaped my character. And what I yearned for was security. So from a very young age, I've been trying to provide security for myself and then later in my life for my family, to the degree that it has naturally forced me and pushed me into making money and building wealth and achieving freedom, because obviously finances and money provides security, and that's kind of been the biggest driving force for me. Not so much the money itself, but what the money provides. So that pushed me into all sorts of money making opportunities, investing, building wealth, everything. You name it, I've done it. Trading, real estate investment trusts, ETFs, property, everything. Over the years, from the age of when I found out I was going to have my first son, which was really the kind of kick up the butt, because I didn't want the same for him that I had growing up, and it was like a turning point in my life. That's when it really started to accelerate, and by the time I was 30, I'd basically replaced my income from a job, or at the job, from leveraged income streams through investments and trading endeavors.
You explained your story, and I was in awe of how you obviously shifted from where you were and where you are now. But that wasn't the reason I wanted to invite you. I felt like there is something about you that really caught my eye, which was a value alignment for me, which was your level of generosity. Because you could have taken all that money and just continued and just lived your life, the wonderful life that you could live. But instead, you have this huge level of generosity, your charitable actions, and also your attitude of how you want to give so freely. So can you speak a little bit more of that? Because I want to know more about that person. Yeah. And how did you make those choices?
There's a lot of reasons that I wanted to do that. Some of it was selfish reasons. And I explain why. So the first reason was I started to realize that the more freer I became, the more time I could buy into the future, the more calm I became, and the better conversations that I'd have with people, and the more caring I became, and I became a better parent and a better partner and a better like someone to speak to down the pub. I just became someone who they said, you know what, I like speaking to you, because when I go away from speaking to you, I feel motivated. And I wasn't deliberately trying to do that, but I realized that the more freedom I had, I felt better as a human. I felt that I could solve better problems. I could deal with complexity in the outside world. I wasn't as swung around emotionally as I wouldn't take stances and form opinions so much as people who were a bit more scarce in their mindset. And I thought, and I genuinely do believe, that when you're free and you're able to focus on what's most meaningful to you, you do become that better person. You become someone who is focused on actually solving problems and actually helping society and helping the world. And I've seen that, I've witnessed it firsthand, I've been that person, and I believe that. And I think if I can help people achieve a level of freedom, they can have that feeling as well, and then they can do the same, and the world will literally be a better place if the more people are free.
I have a question on freedom, because it's a word that keeps coming up, and being free. And before we go to the second reason, I want to know a little bit more about how you define it, because when you say freedom, I get a picture in my mind, but I just wonder if it's the same picture as yours.
Freedom is, first of all, I think freedom is just within you. Like, freedom is not buying things to keep up with other people because it's what they want. Earning enough money that's enough to have what you actually want and not trying to chase something that's outside of what you actually want. Most people, just those two things alone, most people don't even know what that number is. They don't know, they haven't taken the time to be mentally free, to go like, this is the life that I want and that is enough and that's what I'm going after. Instead, what they do is they think that they've got to hustle and chase and grind and earn, be a 7-figure business owner and all these kind of things. And then they're also looking at people spending money on Lamborghinis and all these nice things on Bali and Dubai, and they think they've got to do that. So all of a sudden they're earning money that they don't want, and then they're buying things they don't want, and they're further away from their own self that they could possibly be. And that is the opposite of freedom. Freedom is knowing what you love, knowing what your values are, and building your life around that, and earning enough money to cover the costs of your lifestyle, of things that are meaningful to you and your family, and then bringing that money in a way that is leveraged of your time and space. The more passive it is, obviously, the more freer you feel, and the more mobile that income is, the more freer you feel. And it's about working on those things. It's about having cash in the bank to cover those lifestyle costs, and have the income coming in a way that you could choose to take your foot off the gas if you wish. And it just gives you this kind of relief. So freedom to me is all about knowing yourself. And it's a really powerful place to be, I think. If everyone was understood that freedom is like within, and understanding that you are free. You know, you was born free. You was born to make choices. If you're the only reason that you're not quite where you thought you would be at this point in your life is because you made choices based on what someone else told you to do, and they pushed you off route to what your true path was. And now you're feeling resentful, and now you're feeling a little bit, maybe you're having a midlife crisis because you thought you did the right thing, and now you get to like 50 years old and you think, I did the good thing, but I'm still not got the life that I want. And then you go and do something crazy. Freedom is choice. That is literally the definition of freedom to me. And the more choices you can make and the more in control of your life are, the more free you feel and the more free you are.
I know I want to come to your number 2, but I have a follow-up question on this one. In your everyday life, with the people that you see around you, maybe not in your friendship circle, because I feel like that's going to skew the perception, but when you meet day-to-day people, because you do that and you're well known, how do you perceive the people around you? Do you feel that majority of people have this freedom, or most people don't understand what it is, so they chase something different rather than what they want because they don't know themselves?
Yeah, no, most people aren't free. The mass population aren't free, because in order for the society and the system to work as it is, the money has to flow from people who value it least to people who value it most. And the way that it flows is to people who are leaders, so people who are looked up to. So you take religion, for instance, people who donate 10% of their income to a religion, the person, the top of the religion, they've got the money, they've got the power, right? And they have a mass population who follow them, and they want direction from them, and they want leadership from them, and they hold their hand out to them to guide them, right? It's the same in presidential elections. It's the same in corporations. It's the same in any power, because humans naturally have a feminine mind, which is basically a receiving mind to ideas and leadership, right? So that's a much easier part of our brain to use than the masculine trajectory side of our brain, which is confidence and conviction and dictating ideas and saying, I want this, you should believe this. If most people are using that side of their brain and looking up to people who are projecting ideas, then the masses are going to follow the minors, right? And that's just the way that society's been for forever. We want people to lead us. Most people won't be free because everyone is subordinating to someone who has a masculine projective mind's ideas. So if I say, you should do this, I'm going to have a series of people that will be around me going, Jason said do this, right? And they'll believe me, and it will be 5-1, or it might be 10-1, or it might be 100-1, or in which case my video on YouTube, 4 million to 1. And all of a sudden you've got 4 million people listening to one person believing what I'm saying. And then they're subordinating to me, and they've lost the level of freedom, right? Even though arguably they're being empowered to learn a new skill, they've put their destiny in the hands of someone they're looking up to. That's the point I'm trying to make. If most people are in that state all the time, then most people won't be free. They'll be told how to spend their money. They'll be dictated to how to use their money. And when you've got a population like that, you just have to put suggestive ideas into people's head on how they should spend their money. And we see that all over the TV, how you should spend your money. We see it on charities, how you should spend your money, advertising campaigns, elections, all these kind of things. This is how you should spend your money. And as long as you're being told how you should spend your money, you are not empowered. You're not free. You haven't made up your own choices. You haven't sat down and said, what are the benefits and drawbacks of me spending my money this way? And solving those types of synthesizing those paradoxes is what will provide you with freedom.
In your opinion, what do you think is happening to people that is preventing them from choosing? I know you're saying that people are just receiving. We've all been brought up with choice.
Yeah.
What activates that? You called it feminine and masculine, so the masculine is a projectory one. What activates the masculine part of the brain, in your opinion?
So I'll give you an example. When I learnt to drive when I was 17, I asked my stepdad, I said, do you think I should learn in an automatic car or a manual car? And he said a manual car, because then if you learn in a manual, then you could drive both. And that was based on no other than his opinion of what was probably the right choice for him, because I didn't say, well, is it right for me? And I didn't sit there and go, what are the benefits and drawbacks of me doing a manual? What are the benefits and drawbacks of me doing an automatic? Because I went for the manual route, it cost me more money in lessons because it took me longer to learn. It also took me a longer time to pass my test. So it cost me more money. It cost me more time. Since I've passed my test, I've only driven automatic cars. And now all cars are going automatic. Had I just taken the time to question that and synthesize that paradox and take the route that was more beneficial to the life that I wanted, I would have been more on track with the life that I want to live, right? And I would have been more free. So I would have then activated that masculine side of my brain. And I would say, no, I'm taking this route because this aligns with who I am more. I know I appreciate what you're saying, but this is me. Thank you very much. And I get why you think that's the best route for you, but this is the best route for me. And imagine if you did that and practice that on every single piece of information that you received, and you took it in and you said, well, this person's saying this person's saying that. I'm going to think about what I want in life, and I'm going to take a piece from here and a piece from here, and I'm going to form my own synthesis of that, and I'm going to follow that route. And then that you start taking this route that's directionally correct to where you want to go. Like as the crow flies, you don't find yourself 38 years later way off course, and now you've got to get back 500 miles to the path just to start again. And then you think, I haven't even got the time to do that now. I haven't even got the time left to do that. It's when you get really resentful. So you get it by taking actions aligned with who you want to be. And when people come to you with pushing their projective ideas onto you, which we all do, every human does that. I'll tell people what I think they should do, and you'll tell me what you think they should do. And you see these in Facebook groups all the time, all these arguments and debates that go on, right? Everyone's got an opinion, but it's being able to take that and go, oh yeah, that aligns with me, that aligns with me. I don't really want that. I don't want the life that you've got, so therefore I'm going to do this instead. Then the more you practice that, the more you bring online the executive center of your brain. It's you becoming your own person. Your own, that masculine projective mind.
I really like the way that you position this, because ultimately what I'm hearing is that we need to question more. We need to ask ourselves what it is that we want. What do I want? So that we can align our life to what it is that we actually want, instead of just doing what other people are saying. And it's quite interesting when I look back at the work that I've done with my clients. When I started off, I went from having a business to then helping people with their businesses, because that's what I ended up doing while I had my business. In the really beginning, I definitely did the thing where I'm like, oh, do this, do that, just literally just consulting. Now, and for many years now, I literally ask them, like, what is it that you want? Instead of projecting what I want on them or what I think would be a great idea, the first question is like, what is it that you want? Because Amazing. If it is aligned with them, it's also easier for them to follow through. But they also learn to recognize the decision-making, that power that they have within them to make the choices that they want to make. So I love this response.
Freedom is very little to do with, it's not initially to do with money, because if it was, everyone who won the lottery would have freedom, but they don't. They go broke. They spend all the money. The money goes very quickly, right? And they end up very unhappy, a lot of them. You could have a big banker in a corporation who earns a fortune all his life, cashes out or exits the business. He's going to do something on Monday morning. He's going to try and find something that was meaningful to him. He's going to try and buy some freedom, do something that he always wanted to do. So freedom isn't really about the money, it's about being mentally free. And then once you know what that mental freedom looks like, you then know how much you need to fund that freedom. And that's where most people don't even know that number. Like most people don't even know that. That's the first one. Anyway, the second reason I wanted to start helping people is because, for a selfish reason, you are not providing any value. There's no fulfillment. When you're just at home, sitting in your pants, trading and looking at some charts and becoming a pretty good guitarist, but other than that, it's like there's no fulfillment. And again, the only way that we get fulfillment is by helping other people. That's the only way we feel fulfilled. For me, I wanted company, for starters, and I wanted to talk to people. I wanted to share opinions and what was going on in my head. And see what the response was. It was just for company, really. It was just to just talk and chat, and that was great. So that's the other reason. I think there was another reason. The other reason is obviously I value wealth building. So there was an opportunity to create an income stream from helping people, which obviously then plays into my freedom goal of maintaining leveraged income via very leveraged assets like online businesses and digital platforms that are in this world that we live in today are incredible. And then that plays in line with my values to help me be the best person that I could possibly be, because I've got the security there and the freedom there to then go and level up and scale up. So it all works out. Yeah, so amazing. That's why I do it.
You know, I want to come back to something about being you, like knowing yourself. You're right. Most people don't know who they are. Maybe because they're people pleasers. They've been told how to behave, the cultural implications, familial pressures, all of those things. At what point did you know who you were?
I think, again, this has stemmed from my childhood, because I found myself deliberately distancing myself from my family. And I believe, looking back, I was doing that because I didn't want to follow their path. I didn't want to be like them. And I was the type of kid that was locked in. I locked myself in my room. I was happy in my own company, very young. I'd just sit in my room and occupy myself, take things apart. I was very inquisitive. You know, I would love my own company. And to this day, I still love my own company. I'm a very independent person, and I always was as a kid. And I think, again, that's one of the character traits that developed in me early on as a result of having no security, no one to rely on. And it was kind of up to me to just left to get on with it. That's how I felt as a kid. And I think that makes you into an independent person. And when you're an independent person like that, you start to get to know yourself quite well, because you don't really tell anyone anything. And obviously there's drawbacks to that as well. There's been, my wife has helped me explain what's on my mind better now, because, you know, there's periods of time where I just don't put anything on anyone, and then it's just like boiling up in my head, and I've been able to cope with that, but I've also seen the drawbacks of doing that. And, you know, I've got a wife that has helped with that as well. It's like understanding that you need to let some of this stuff out. But I really do know myself well, and over the years I've practiced knowing myself even better. And it is just things like, if someone didn't know themselves, for instance, there's a series of questions that you could just ask yourself to really find out who you are. And it's things like, if you didn't need to work anymore, Monday morning, what would be the first thing you choose to do? What do you bring up in conversation most? You know, if I was to ask your friends about you, what would they say you're the person to go to for? You know, what do they ring you for? What are you dependable for? Another thing, what do you spend most of your disposable income on? You know, what do you find yourself changing the subject to when it's your time to speak? What do you get more energized about when there's a conversation going on? When you go to a shopping center, what are the shops and things like that you gravitate towards? If you open up your camera roll on your phone and you scroll back all the years, what are the things you take most photos of? All these kind of things will form a pattern, and there'll be an underlying theme of what's most valuable to you. And that's who you truly are. And it'll be something that's probably from your childhood. It'll be something that you value most now because you perceive the lack of in your childhood. So, like, people who love family usually had a bad upbringing, or, you know, their dad wasn't around, or, you know, they're very family oriented and they love Christmas, and they love even like going food shopping and things like that are family activities that they didn't have as the norm, or they used to value really highly when they did happen as a kid. People who love wealth building and business and things like that are people who usually either have a point to prove because they looked up to their dad or something, or they had no security, so they value money. So it's fascinating, all these things that drive us and shape us. But when you piece all of that together, you start to really understand why you are like you are. And more importantly, you love the way that you are. You know, you're appreciative to why you are the way you are. And until that point, you've probably beaten yourself up about it, or you've seen it as a negative. So, and actually, it's actually a really good thing that you do that, because it's some kind of mechanism that was created in you from early on.
I know my journey, and there have been great successes and multiple failures. For people who are listening, I think they see people in success and go like, well, you were lucky, or I didn't have the same opportunity. I'm not smart as you. I'm not as extroverted as you. They project their own reasons of why they can't achieve the same success as you. Can you speak towards some of the failures to also normalize your success?
I think failure is just giving up in general, right? So failure to me is just when you stop something and you say, that didn't work, therefore I'm not pursuing it ever again, I'm not doing it anymore. That to me is a failure. And usually you see a lot of failures when people are chasing something that isn't actually meaningful to them. So if I was to look online and everyone had entrepreneur in their bio, and I just started believing that I had to be an entrepreneur, and I started to go and build a business, but it was really, you know, if I'd answered all the questions that I just said to you just before, and none of those was like entrepreneurship, then I'm doing something that isn't meaningful to me, and I'm just doing it to appease someone else, or because it's the trendy thing to do. Those usually end up in failures because they're things that aren't sustainable. You don't wake up intrinsically motivated to do them, and therefore you're not going to keep it up, you know, and you're going to fail. Lessons, however, are being able to do something that you know isn't going to be your best, and it isn't, and you haven't put your best into it. And there is another way that you could have done it, but you've done it anyway, and it hasn't quite worked out for you, but it's a stepping stone, because you look back at it and you go, I know that I would have done that differently. I know that I didn't quite have my ducks in a row. It wasn't my time right now, but I've learned this, and this. And next time it's going to be better, because I'm going to do this. I'm going to cover my back here. I'm going to make sure I've got that contingency plan. I'm going to make sure that the staff don't steal from me or leave, or, you know, all these kind of things. And you start learning. And as long as you keep moving forward and applying what you've learned to the next step, you're never going to fail. Like that is not, it's just lessons. Like you're inevitably going to get growth, and you're inevitably going to reach your goal if you just take on board the lessons that you've learned from what you labeled as a failure, but apply it to the next attempt, and the next attempt, and the next attempt. And that's what every successful person who I've ever met has done. So you saw me speak at that event where I played my first attempt at a YouTube video. I was shitting myself, pardon my French. You know, it was 4 hours to create a 4-minute video. I'm extremely introverted. I'd never spoke to a camera, and I'd never done any public speaking whatsoever. I was an engineer who had been good at investing, good at trading, and good at business, and now I was going to open up a camera. It was terrible, you know, and I hated every second of it, but I put it out on YouTube, and then the next day it was a bit better, and then the next day it was a bit better. And there's still videos I look back at 2 years ago and I cringe, you know, because it's not something that I would say in that way today, or maybe I got like a funny twang in my voice or something like that. But looking back, constructive criticism of yourself, and I'll never fail because I'm always working on something that I love. The message is what I love. The message is what I believe in, what I said at the beginning of this. I believe everyone is a better human when they're free and able to focus on their most meaningful work. So therefore, I need to get over myself and help relay that message to as many people as possible. My sweating armpits on a YouTube video isn't going to be enough for me to go, I'm not doing this anymore, because the cause is way bigger in my head. It's important to first make sure you're on track with doing something that you love. Second of all, look back at yourself, and anything that you're criticizing, just don't see as a failure, just see as a lesson and how you can improve. And then last thing I'd say on that is all the hater comments and things that you're going to get, or haters of your, whatever it is you're trying to do, pessimists or whatever you want to call them, don't necessarily like block those out of your life, because I found them to be tremendously helpful. I actually think if you was just around people that sang your praises, you would become complacent and fat, right? You would believe you're the best, and you would stop and you would slow down, and you'd actually believe that you was great. Whereas the haters only hurt when they say something that you don't like about yourself. If I was ripped with a six-pack and someone said, oh, you fat git, that's not going to bother me. But if I was putting on a bit of weight after Christmas and someone said, you're getting fat, that might hurt a little bit because I'm not happy about it. I see the haters there as people to guide you back on track, because it only hurts when you know they're right. That's really when it hurts. It's like, I don't love this about myself. So you either then have to make it right or learn to love whatever it is that you don't love about yourself. Because if you don't love everything about yourself, you're not going to have the best life that you could have. Someone is going to be controlling you in that particular area in some way.
I hear a lot of reframing of the word failure to something completely different. And everything comes back to knowing who you are and doing what you love. That's like what I'm hearing. It's really difficult for people to grasp how simple it can be, because the questions that would come up, which I normally would ask, which feels redundant at this stage, would be, well, how do you keep going? Because that's what the listeners would be asking. Like, but when things aren't working and you keep trying and you're checking all the boxes and you keep doing it, how do you keep going? But I think I'm going to ask you a different question. How do you know when to stop?
That's a great question. So I'll just touch on the first part of that question just anyway, because I think it's important. You keep going because you have a bigger cause, for starters. So this is all comes back to knowing what you want in life, right? We get like 85 years or whatever it is. It's not a long time. The sooner you can map out actually what success looks like to you and where you would be happy, the better, because then you've got something tangible to work towards. Once you know that, the way that you stop giving up is to link your business, making money, building wealth, to that thing that you value most. So you write down 100 questions like, how will doing this business or doing this thing that's uncomfortable right now help me achieve that amazing life that is my highest value? If that's family, how will doing this business allow me to have a better family? Like how will it allow me to be a better father, a better mother, or whatever it might be? How will it help my kids? How will it help, our family financially? How will it help our family every way, right? And you write down every single reason why carrying on will benefit that bigger vision. When you do that, you literally create like neural pathways in your brain that create beliefs that doing that thing is an absolute necessary to give you the best life that you've got. So then there's no stopping you, because it's like, if I want my most valuable life and I want to live by my highest values, I have to do this. This is going to provide that path. So that's how you stop giving up. How you know when to stop is having that vision of what success looks like. So I've been over in Dubai and I've sat on a yacht with a couple of billionaires and people that are multi six-figure millionaires, and they hate their staff and they're moaning about the corporations that they're in, and they're chasing the next buck, or we can make this money, we can make that money, but they're all miserable. The ones that I met were just really frustrated, their wives leaving them, no stability, very volatile lives. I felt like I was the most successful person there. I felt like, because I was just, enough was enough. I knew that if I never made any more money from today and every day was like today for the rest of my life, I'd be very, very happy. So chasing tomorrow's profit, but sacrificing today's happiness for tomorrow's profit, and then tomorrow's profit never coming because there's another profit and another profit, that's when you need to have a milestone from the outset to say, I would be happy if this was my life. And at least when you get there, you can go, wow, you feel a real sense of accomplishment. And then you can decide, do I want to go a little bit further? Or pat yourself on the back because now you've achieved what you said you was going to achieve. But again, boils back to people just not defining this stuff. Life is just coming to them. They're not actually creating life. They feel like life's just happening to them. They don't feel like they're the driver. They're not the driver because they've got no destination plugged into the sat nav. So then they're just coasting, like going with whoever's the most influential, telling them what road to take. Yeah, and that's, to me, is why we're in such a predicament with everyone losing their identity. No one knows who they bloody are, to the point where people don't want to be compared to anyone anymore. So they're creating their own identities, because they then can't be they then can't be accused and blamed of, you should do this or do that. It's a pandemic for sure.
What do you mean by creating their own identities because they don't want to be compared? I don't think I follow.
So many people on social media tell you how you should be. You should be this, you should do that, you should be an entrepreneur, you should hustle, you should grind, you should, do this, that, and the other. People are feeling so much pressure to fit into a certain box that the way out of that is to create an identity of your own that can't be compared to anyone else. So people are really trying, and you're seeing like people create their own identities, literally. Like they're going out there with from visual to pronouns to genders to everything, right? We're seeing it. And I believe a lot of that is down to trying to not be compared to others. If you create your own identity, then you can't be compared to that person anymore. And then you feel a sense of relief and empowerment. That's what I mean. If it makes sense, great. If it doesn't, I'm sorry. It's just the ramblings of my head.
I just wanted to get some clarity on that because I wasn't sure. You've touched upon children a bit, and I want to go there. I have 3 siblings, and we have 3 incredibly different money mindsets. My brother, I hope he never listens to any of my podcasts or anything that I say because I talk about my siblings, but my brother for the longest time thought that money grew on trees, and I'm talking about late 30s. He's like, oh, if I ask my parents, I'll just get the money. My sister, super high achiever. She's like, I'm going to be a strong, independent woman. I'm going to make my own money. But she is scarce. Like everything is like, she's a saver. She doesn't spend money on herself. It's as if there's a lot of scarcity. Mm-hmm. And me, I'm like, I can generate money whenever I want. I'm easy. Money goes, money comes. I'm relaxed about it. We had the same parents. Yeah. And we have 3 incredibly different attitudes towards money. And it fascinates me. So now I have my child, and my husband and I have different views on money. And I'll cringe sometimes when my husband would say like, no, you can't use that because it's expensive. I'm like, don't say that. That's not the reason why he can't use it. He can't use it because of some other reasons. So like we have such incredibly different conversations at home. I gave my son a wallet when he was 2. I'm like, here's some money. Here's some coins for you. I want him to be educated with money from the start. But yet the difficulty is that my husband and I have, I mean, of course we parent and we align, but ultimately we do have different mindsets around it. I'm curious to know how you are with your children, and then also want to talk about how you, other people's children, like what your thoughts are.
There's a couple of things I'd say on this. One is I learned something very fascinating about just evolution and how we are made to have, like the roots of a tree, to diversify so we have a stable foundation, so we have stability and longevity in our survival, right? So siblings will usually be the opposites of each other. One will be an academic, one will be more of a compassionate, caring, right? And you have that. I also believe that we attract balance in our life, and the partner that we select is the opposite. So I don't believe like things in common and all that kind of stuff. I think that's a myth. I think we want the opposite. And I think, and definitely I've been in my relationship for 22 years. We've been married for 15 and we've got a great relationship, amazing relationship. And that is because we appreciate what the other person brings to that party. Weaknesses are supported by my strengths, my weaknesses are supported by her strengths. So with that going on in the family dynamic, and then the kids being developed in opposite ways as well, you have this diverse foundation that is giving you the biggest chance of longevity and stability as survival, because you can cover all bases. If someone's ill, you've got someone to look after you. If someone's needs to go and make money, you've got someone at home to make the sandwiches. That's fascinating. Second of all, there's the values that are shaped in us by the time we're 7 years old, and the things we hear around money. So there's a great saying that good times create weak people create bad times create strong people create good times, right? And it's this cycle. So if you go back to what I said when I was a kid, I figured out that I valued security because when I look back at my childhood, I had none. And I perceived that as something that was missing from my life. Therefore, it became really high on my values as an adult. But it works the other way. So I've naturally done everything in my power to earn as much money as I can and provide with, leveraged income streams so I can have my time and space back and have security for my family. But then what do? I then don't want the same for my kids. So then I give them everything, and then they never have to work. And then they now seek struggle. They want struggle. So what they'll do is naturally develop this chaotic relationship with money where it's like, it'll be fine. I won't put a parking ticket on my car. I'll just pay a fine. And then they have this turmoil through their life where they're never good with money because they actually want struggle with their money because that was the thing that they saw was missing. They don't value the contrast. There's no value of, I better be good with money. So they're actually chasing chaos in their money. That's fascinating as well, right? And then there's the language that we hear. So you're telling your kids, don't say it's too expensive. That's bad language towards money, which I agree with. you should say, wow, that's amazing how they can charge so much for that. They must have a great brand or a great business. That's exactly how I would see it. And I'd appreciate it. I'd want to learn how they're charging so much for it. And I love it. But then when you hear money doesn't grow on trees, you believe money is scarce and you believe that there's no money around. So all of these things creates this really complex situation that develops your family in a way that's almost uncontrollable. Like, I try not to control that. I just, again, I appreciate it. And I understand why people have certain views on money. And if I want to get a point across to someone, I try and explain it in a way where they would understand based on their own value and beliefs on money. Or I try and tell a story or an analogy or some kind of fable where I can elegantly slip it in and they might go, oh yeah, I never thought about that. And that's kind of how I've tried to create all of my content, to be honest with you, to connect with as many people with as different beliefs as possible. But just knowing that is such a great thing, because I'm forever hearing people, I try and tell my sister to do this and listen to your podcast. And I'm like, they won't listen to my podcast. Why would they? You know, it's not on their priorities. It's much better to get them to focus on their priorities and then understand how actually being sensible with their money might help their priorities. Your priorities are wrong. What a load of rubbish. No one's priorities are wrong. Everyone's priorities are perfect to them, right? You just have to help them understand how managing money, or the opposite of that priority, in your opinion, might help them and get more of their priority. That's the key to influence. That's the key to sales. That's the key to everything, right? It's just getting people to understand how they can get more of what they want by getting the thing that you're telling them. That's basically the key to sales and influence.
Specifically, though, with your kids, when was the first time you gave them money that they can freely spend? Or do you have restrictions? Like, I'm curious about these details.
So the first way that I allowed my kids to make money was I would pick a horrible job to do, right? So it'd be cleaning the gutters around the whole house, or jet spraying the whole patio, or something really horrible that I wouldn't want to do myself, right? And if they were like saving for something like a computer game or something, and they wanted something, I would say, look, instead of giving you £10 towards the game, I'll give you £100, but you've got to do this horrible job, right? And the horrible job has to be 100% complete, otherwise you don't get a penny. You can get 99% of the way done, and if you say, oh yeah, I've only just got to do that last bit, I won't pay you anything, right? What that taught them is, one, you can get paid more if you solve a bigger problem for someone and you solve a bigger pain point for someone. There's always jobs to do that people are willing to pay a lot more for. Two, you get paid on results and you don't exchange your time for money ever, because you could do that thing in an hour or you could take a week. You're still going to get paid the same amount of money. Three, it forced him to get other people on board. So he would influence his brother to help him. We've got photos of him ripping up a carpet in our old house, and we've got photos of him cleaning out the greenhouse, and he's got his brother on board, right? So he's had to go and influence his brother to work for him to then share some of the profit. So he was like, if I get this Xbox early, you know, you can play and we can play together. So help me with this and we can get it quicker. So all these skills that, in my opinion, are really, really powerful skills to develop, entrepreneurial skills, they're great to have. And then when they get the money, then I tell them, take 10%, put it into an account, have the rest. That's about it. You know, it was basically just time is not money. You can get paid a lot of money if you solve a bigger problem for someone. You can delegate and get freedom back, which is what I did with when I wanted my first BMX. I literally delegated the whole car wash thing. And you can create freedom and get more money and not exchange time for money and get what you want, and, you know, and invest some of your money into sensible assets. And that was it. And, you know, I don't know where that's going to go in the long run, but that's been embedded in them. And they've been around this environment for a long time. And although I don't push my ideas of you should be an entrepreneur or you should do this, I say you should do what you want to do, you know, and I'll support you as much as I can, but I try and guide them into what they naturally love, because that's what they're going to be best at, and then help advise them on why managing their money wisely will help them do more of what they love. That's really it. That's all I'm here to do. I'm here to help them make good decisions and make choices, but ultimately be their own person, be who they want to be. I'm not here to worry. I've got a tiny life myself. I don't care how they bring up their kids. My job is just to bring them up in a way that I think is going to serve them.
Nice. I love that. For a moment, when you talked about influencing the brothers, I thought they were going to bring in their friends to just do it. Pay them off.
That would have been good. If they did that, they'd be working for me now.
You talk a lot about investment, and when I was on your website, I saw more men than women. Do you find that more men are managing their money and wanting to play with money over women? Do you see a demographic difference?
I mean, statistically, I've got a demographic difference. It's 35% female, which is still quite high, but I do get a lot of messages. Women seem to be much more level-headed and logical in their approach as to why they want to do it, but they do seem a lot more emotional about actually managing it. So obviously women are more emotional than men. That's just, again, it's one of those things that we can't escape. That's just how it is. I don't know why I've got a more masculine following. It's not massively overly masculine, but it's skewed that way. But in terms of like traders, for instance, women make much better traders. We've got a much higher success rate with traders in women. Like if you took we've placed four female traders into prop firms in Manhattan over the last year. That's way more than the men that we've placed in the year. So, I think there's one or two guys. So, yeah, I mean, that I don't know why they're better at it. They're more sensible. But yeah, it's not really a gender thing. I think anyone can manage their money. You just have to know why you're doing it and have a big enough reason to want to do it and see the benefits of how that's going to help you long term. So yeah, I don't know.
I wondered if it was something around taking risks. So you even said that women are more sensible. So is it so that maybe men are higher risk takers than women? I don't know.
That definitely plays a part. I mean, if I was to dissect it, which is something I haven't really done, but I would say to be a good investor and a good trader, you primarily have to be a good risk manager. And then the money is the profits are a byproduct of managing risk. If you're someone who's going to jump out of an airplane on a parachute and you love going down the casino and putting everything on red, you're probably more likely to be a man doing that, and that will be portrayed in your trading results as well. I think women are much more thinking about not losing, whereas men are like, what can I win? And that's the difference. Men are very competitive in the win, and females are like nurturing, protective of of their eggs, right? So it's like, I don't want to lose the eggs.
What are you working on right now that you want people to know about?
Right now, I'm just about to, first of all, I'm doing a TED Talk in September, which is going to be in line with the release of my book called Always Free. So that'll be out later this year. And then I'm basically relaunching my wealth program, which is called Tears of Freedom. And I'm going to take a series of cohorts through with me. And we're going to do a full live boot camp throughout the summer. So that's going to be awesome.
For people who don't know what Tears of Freedom is, can you just explain a little bit?
Sure. It's how to achieve financial freedom as efficiently and as effectively as possible. So everything from your mindset towards money, we're going to break that down and overcome those hurdles, which we've discussed in this podcast. We're going to show you how to create that vision and that purpose and align wealth building to who you really are. And then we're going to walk through your personal finance structure and get all that automated and delegated. And then we're going to talk about investments. And then we're going to talk about income. And then we're going to talk about speculation. And we're going to give you all the tools to do that so that you have a tangible number and you can see all of the metrics going in and it will get you motivated to actually achieve it. Looking forward to that.
I think before we close off, my audience is primarily creative. And they most likely are daunted by everything you just said, even though they desire it.
Yeah.
I don't know, what would you say to a creative who doesn't like to look at their bank account, doesn't look at their numbers? What is something that you might say to them that will inspire them to take a step towards the right direction?
First of all, don't stop being a creative. You can make a lot of money being a creative. That's first and foremost, and I'm sure that'll be well received to hear that as a creator. They want to know that is a way that you can make loads of money, because a lot of the time they feel down and out and they feel like they've got to be someone else to make money, but you can definitely make money doing that. You need to understand why you have buried your head in the sand when it comes to money. You need to face that gremlin. and it's usually going to be some language you have around money to do with, it's going to be an event that took place in your past. It's going to be either someone always looked after the money. It's going to be someone had a bad experience with money. I've never been good with money. Like, where does that come from? And once you can pinpoint where that came from, you would have labeled whatever that event was as a negative thing. Therefore, you've just accepted it and you've labeled it negative, and you carry on with it, right? So let's just say that you've buried your head in the sand about money because another business venture went bust, or you had some tax bill, or your parents split up over money, or whatever it might be. Go back to that point and start to see the good in what happened there, right? So it's like, what was the good in that business going bust? Because a lot of the time, when you ask someone years later, like, was that a bad thing that happened? They usually say, oh no, it's the best thing that ever happened, because like if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have this and this new partner, I wouldn't have traveled the world, wouldn't have done this, met this person. So you want to see that now. You want to dissolve that right now. And the way that you do it is to see the good in everything that happened in. So if your parents were arguing, split up, ask yourself what the benefits that came out of that. What was the good that came out of that? What lessons, how much did they let those lessons, would those lessons have cost you if you were still having to go through those lessons now? What would it have cost you in the long run? If it was a business that went bust, what was the benefits to that? What did you learn? What were those lessons worth? What opportunities have you got now in your life as a result of that? How did you grow from that? When you start to stack up the good that came out of an event like that, you start to dissolve this negative opinion that you had on the event itself in the first place. And then you start to not bury your head in the sand. Then you start feeling empowered, and you want to touch money again, and you want to get close to money. But that's where it starts, because the most important thing is you do get close to your money. If it's uncomfortable, check your bank balance every day. If that's all you did, just check your bank balance every day, your balance would go up. I promise. If you're burying your head in the sand about money, and you all of a sudden start checking your bank balance every morning when you wake up, you will be focused. We attract what we focus our energy and attention to. So, there's lots of woo-woo fluff about the law of attraction, but the law of attraction is basically dedicating your time and effort and energy on something you're focused on, right? So if you plan a holiday to Disneyland, you're probably going to go on that holiday. If you plan getting a new car, you're probably going to get that new car. So you just focus on the bank balance. And I'm not saying that that's just going to miraculously, a check's going to show up in the post box, but just by it being in your conscious and not your subconscious, you're now going to take different actions. You're going to be motivated to focus on it and build it and grow it. And you're going to be more aware of it and how you're spending it. And I promise you, just that thing alone will get you back into, right, this is something I need to do.
Amazing. Everyone go check your bank balance and make that a regular thing every day and watch that balance grow. It's been amazing to chat to you, Jason. For all of you listening and watching, give him a follow on YouTube. Sign up to his Tier 1 program. It's going to change your life, I'm sure of it. Or at the very least, listen to his podcast. It's been a pleasure to have you, Jason.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great. Thank you.
That's it for today's episode of The Creative Flight. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I invite you to leave a review. It really helps more creators find the show. For more insights and behind the scenes content, you can follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn. You can also check out my resources on ivymalik.com. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Until then, keep creating, keep pushing those boundaries, and keep taking flight.